Thank you for joining us once again. We are very excited to be hosting another edition of our conversations with leaders in this smart technology space. And today we have someone that is involved in the data science field. And I will ask Johan Steyn, my colleague, to introduce our guest. Johan?
Thank you. I say this every time, I won't stop saying it. We have amazing people in South Africa working in this broad field of smart technology and AI, data science and the like. And really it's our aim to host them and to showcase what they do, because a lot of people don't know how many amazing companies and people we have in this country. So today it's a great honor to welcome as our guest Siobhain O'Mahony. And let me just quickly go through the LinkedIn stuff here. A qualified actuary, a non-executive director, previously the head of analytics and my investments at Investec Private Bank, global top 100 innovators in data and analytics in 2020, and the founder and co-CEO of Marco Polo Advisory. Siobhain, you work in stuff that we find very interesting. Welcome. And if there's anything I missed on your bio, before we even get to Marco Polo and the rest, please tell us, how are you keeping?
Oh, thanks, Johan and Zenzele. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to be chatting to both of you today. Thank you for having me. And as Johan, as far as the bio goes, I think that's spot on. That's perfect. Nothing to add.
Okay. Well, let me kick it off. So, actuary. Obviously, you're a very smart person. To data and analytics, I can see the link there to eventually being a co-CEO and founder of your own company. Maybe in a 2 or 3 minutes, just what's the highlights of that journey? How did you get into actuarial science? Obviously, you must be good in math. I suck in it. But yeah, just tell us how you got to where you are today.
Oh, sure. Yes, I think starting with actuarial science. I wish I sort of had some amazing story of how I ended up there. I think, but like any teenager at the time, needed to pick subjects for varsity applications, and did a little bit of job shadowing, chatted to as sort of many people as I could. And it was actually my dad who'd suggested that perhaps I look into the actuarial field. Yes, I wasn't bad at maths at school. Amongst some of the other subjects you need behind you to apply to AXI, and yeah, it just I did some research into it. In all honesty, before my dad had suggested it, I'd never even heard of actuaries. Had no idea what they did. But I think it's also a field that perhaps isn't that well understood even today. I mean, I'm talking more than a decade ago now, 2 decades almost, but. It just, I think what attracted me to the field was the breadth of skills that you acquire through your studies as an actuary. Everybody associates it with maths. Some get it right sometimes and also add in statistics, but it is quite a lot broader than that. You study product development, marketing, some of the legal side of things, obviously insurance, risk. We're actually viewed as experts in sort of the modeling of risk. And I think it was the breadth of that skill set that really just interested me. At the same time, it was also a degree that came with a professional association, ultimately, and all of those sorts of things, as well as its sort of international transferability of the degree appealed to me should I ever want to work sort of further afield than South Africa. So those are some of the reasons I went into AXI. Really enjoyed the degree, I must say. So that was great, and started working at Liberty when I started my career. I think, again, like any youngster starting out, don't really know ultimately actually what you're interested in, and that's something I learned quite early on. I chose to go into a very technical team within actuarial science and evaluation space, thinking I would absolutely love that. working with the numbers and so forth every day, and actually sort of realized quite early on I hated it. It was really, really boring. And that's got nothing to do with the organization or the people I worked with. I need to say that up front, they were fantastic, but the role just didn't suit me. I think it was a lot of number crunching, which was great, but I didn't actually get to the so what of things. So what about the numbers? How did they get used? How did they influence business and so on? And I think that's where I then quickly discovered my sort of passion lay. So I looked for something different, ultimately got me to Investec. I actually joined Investec for a completely different reason to analytics. Never thought I'd be, thought of the analytics field. But I joined a project to build a retail banking offering, which after a couple of months was paused. Investec changed strategy. But through the work I had done there, some of the execs within the private bank recognized the value that data analysis and the actuarial skill set applied to that field could add, and asked me to build an analytics team for Investec. They didn't have anything of the sorts. They sort of had barely any BI or MI. And I started building the team back in 2013. So it was also actually by accident, through somebody else recognizing some of the work I was doing as part of another project, thought it could be something bigger, something with more influence, and asked me to build a team. And I've been doing it ever since, and really found, I think, what I'm passionate about. Because if I take it back to what I learned at Liberty, for me, what I love about analytics is not the model building, the number crunching, any of that. I mean, for me, that is just part of the process, but it's the insight, it's the so what, it's how it can influence things, impact business, people's lives, and so forth. It's that problem solving side of things that it really opens up and enables. And I think that's what I absolutely love about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Siobhain. Sometimes I think most of us actually, in our first, our studies, initial studies, we go there not knowing really what we were doing, because that's what probably we qualified to do. Actually, I was speaking to a friend of mine previously. He was in economics, and now he's in the technology space. And I asked him, what happened to economics? He said, no, we were growing up there. That's why we're studying there. So, but
Exactly.
yes,
Exactly.
yes. And anyway, Marco Polo Advisory. Tell us more about that. What do you do there? What kind of services or solutions you provide?
Sure. So really, we like to think of ourselves as a boutique analytics consulting business. And we really focus, I'd say, largely on two predominant areas, really being analytics, and I'll explain a little bit more about what we do there, as well as data protection and data privacy. And then I guess to a smaller extent, we obviously have quite extensive networks in the data space. So we are able to assist businesses not only with training, development, and so forth of their employees, but also to help recruit the appropriate skill set into the space. I think that it requires quite a specialized knowledge of the space to really find the right resource for these sorts of teams. And sometimes I think that our experience really benefits some of our clients in that space, in terms of being able to identify the right sorts of resources, or just leverage our networks to actually find the resources. But if I take it back to the analytics and the data privacy, on the analytics side, we really look to cover the entire analytics value chain, or I guess as far as we see what that value chain being. So it's everything from assisting really sort of small to medium-sized businesses. We're absolutely also very happy to do work for larger corporates, but you typically do find that those businesses have their own in-house analytics teams already, and potentially a lot further along in the journey. So we're really looking to focus on businesses who either do not have an in-house analytics team and need this kind of support, or they have a team, but they need to bolster it with a few resources and some expertise and experience. So we look at everything from your descriptive and diagnostic analytics right at the beginning of the value chain, to your predictive prescriptive analytics, through to behavioral modeling. We've got a lot of expertise in loyalty program design, loyalty modeling, that kind of behavioral modeling, financial modeling. So really your business case building, trying to assess the commercial benefit or viability of proposals. be it new product designs, new ventures, etc. And then through to research, so market research, strategic research, competitor research for businesses, a lot of that kind of work, pricing. So we've got a lot of pricing expertise. Some people might not think that's really vanilla analytics, but you do need sort of the analytics component, the modeling component, I believe, to really be effective in the pricing space, to understand the behavioral piece and so forth. And then, of course, I guess the advanced analytics piece, so more of the sort of machine learning AI type piece. So we cover that full value chain in the analytics space. And then within the data privacy and protection piece, I guess for us, the two go hand in hand, particularly with things like GDPR, POPIA, and so forth, having emerged over the last couple of years. I think it's really important to be able to offer analytics and data services within a wrapper of data governance. So I guess it's to give our clients that sort of comfort that we operate like that, but also as a standalone service, we then can support businesses across the data privacy and protection landscape, both locally and internationally. So we've got POPIA skills, GDPR skills, etc., and can assist firms to become compliant and post becoming compliant with their ongoing compliance requirements.
Well, I've got 12 questions that came out of what you just said. Well, so I think it's interesting that you guys also focus on the smaller segment of the market, because I think, as you say, a lot of the large banks, for instance, insurance and so forth, have their teams. Even in my consulting experience, is often a bit of a disaster from a maturity point of view and the like. But even your smaller firms, SMMEs or even kind of the mid-tier firms, we suddenly have this avalanche of data at our disposal. Either the data, we don't know how much data we really can harvest from our customers, or we are harvesting it, we don't know what to do with it, we don't know how to do it responsibly. We kind of hope that we're not caught up with the privacy legislation. But yeah, so I guess my question, if I can summarize the 12, because I want to ask you about the skills in our market. Is it there? What can we do to increase these skills? But also, are firms, big to small as a whole, mature or maturing in what they're doing with their data and maturing in doing it responsibly and ethically? It's a huge question for a huge answer. Let's see what you can say.
It is. So let me start with your second question first, Johan. And I guess very simply, my answer would be, from our observation, no. I wouldn't say that the market is, or firms within the market are mature, or even maturing in their use of data analytics and so forth. Definitely, I think you've got your organizations. You spoke a little bit about the banks. In my experience, yes, those guys are more on the front foot than some of the other organizations we might work with, in terms of not only their use of data, but their thinking about their use of data. So the sorts of use cases you can apply it to. It's definitely, I think, becoming a lot more innovative there. But I think there's still quite a ways to go in that space. But I think, and I'd say probably also from my experience, I don't know if it was similar for you in consulting, perhaps the manufacturing space, also a little bit more mature in their use of perhaps data, some of the more smart technologies and so forth. But on the whole, if I have to look at the entire spectrum of the market, I would say absolutely not. And I think you'd be quite surprised by some of the firms, given the nature of their business and the nature of the information, the data that they sit on, versus their level of maturity. Perhaps would have expected them to be further along. But I think it's for me, remains a space that people are somewhat scared of. To be fair, I think people are sort of quite risk averse when it comes to data and analytics, and I think that's principally driven by a lot of the rhetoric at the moment in the privacy, cybersecurity, protection space. People don't want to be caught out. People, and unfortunately, a lot of people misunderstand the legislation, the application of the legislation, and so forth. But I also think that it's very much a space where us as analysts, us as the SMEs, haven't done ourselves any favor in terms of entrenching it in businesses. I feel that, sometimes in my experience, we can show up with a lot of lingo that sort of laymen are not going to understand, people who don't work with it every day. So that's something that I think we try to be very conscious of, even in my time at Investec and leading the team there. It was very important for me that our data team was as business literate as we try to get the business to become data literate, because I think it's a two-way street. And I think, if you sit in front of somebody and start discussing a subject using very technical terminology and so forth that they're not exposed on a day-to-day basis, it can be very daunting, it can be very overwhelming. So I think it is a space that people generally, from a business perspective, almost shy away from, just because it's sort of like this black hole of, you know, the unknown, and it's the really clever, smart people who deal with that sort of stuff, so we can't get involved. And as I say, I don't think we've necessarily, as a community of analytics people, done ourselves any favors in sort of helping to drive the entrenchment of this sort of skill set. In terms of the skills in the SA market, I would say absolutely, they are 100% there. I think we've got fantastic skills in the market across the spectrum. And when I say that, I don't just refer to the very sort of traditional data science skill sets and so forth, you know, be it the IT skills or the applied math skills and so forth, perhaps the more traditional, typical places people will go look for resources. I'm talking about everything from your engineers to your CAs, to your, you know, economists, your econometrics backgrounds, to your psychologists. You know, if again, I look at the teams that I've built over the years, I've specifically tried to cultivate teams of very different mixed skills, because I think that's when you'd be truly successful, if you've got very mixed skill sets, because it's about problem solving. Ultimately, in my mind, analytics, data science, any of that is problem solving. And the only way you're really going to solve that problem effectively is if you come at it from very different angles, different ways of thinking. And you're only going to get that, you bring together different mindsets. So I can absolutely say, in my experience, the market is really is overflowing and is rich with these sorts of youngsters, of resources. But I think you need to know what to look for. I think you need to be open to looking for those different sorts of resources and then cultivating the particular skills you're looking for in that individual, or you recognize in them. Not everybody in the team has to be the best coder, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You want different things from those people, and it's about that amalgamation of skills in my mind.
Awesome. I like that you're providing your solutions to the SMEs. You know, I'm very passionate about that space because I think there's always great potential, and I think the contributions in terms of creating jobs and even coming up with a lot of innovations, they often happen within the SME space. Maybe when you're looking at the AI adoption or the implementation within that space, I think Johan spoke about the data being organized and all those other challenges that are found there. But how are you finding the market in terms of the responsiveness of the clients that you serve, or the potential clients that you deal with in adopting these smart technologies? Is there that willingness, or you have to do a lot of work in terms of educating them, making them realize that they need these technologies? How are you finding the responsiveness there?
Okay, so I think I'm probably maybe going to have quite an interesting, unexpected answer given what I've just said. But I think, and maybe a bit of a long answer. So I think if I look at sort of, you know, AI adoption, particularly over the last couple of years, for me, we've worked quite predominantly in the financial services sector. So I think initially a lot of that sort of adoption was in areas like risk, looking at compliance, risk monitoring, credit scoring, those sorts of spaces predominantly. Then we seemed to go through a phase where it was about chat and chatbots and digitalization, and, you know, every organization wanted a chatbot. So we sort of we've gone through that phase, and then it felt like there was another phase that started to come around now around contextual, and everything being contextual and personalized offers and personalization. And that seems to be, for me, where a lot of the focus with people is always gravitating towards. And, you know, I can understand why. It's obviously driven by your giants like your Amazons, your Googles, etc., that are driving those sorts of expectations amongst consumers through the services they're able to deliver. And now that is the expectation really from any interaction people have with service providers and businesses. So I can sort of understand the trend. I think what we have found is that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding around the space, or shouldn't we say a little bit, but quite a lot. So while I said previously that sort of the adoption of analytics and so forth is not mature and not maturing, when you do have conversations about analytics, organizations, irrespective of where they are on the maturity curve, want to go straight to AI. So that's my other experience, which is, and I think that again is because it's the latest lingo. You know, as I said again in one of my previous responses, the space is very much about lingo, and people pick up on lingo without completely understanding what it is. And as a result, you know, we sit with some of the challenges we do. And so everybody wants to implement AI and get going on AI. And some of what we find we're having to do with some clients is actually pull them back to say, look, so your sort of the size of your business and the type of business, you don't really actually need that. And you're not going to be able to actually implement it, because I think what people also think is that it's just something quite easy to implement, and you know, off you go. And they forget building the models, and that's what I also always say to people, is the easy part. It's really, in my mind, not the difficult part, but actually getting those models implemented into an existing business and corporate, maintaining those models, retraining those models, that is the difficult part. And a lot of organizations, including our big banks, our big insurers, do not have the infrastructure currently to actually do that effectively. So it's quite a strange one in that. And so you don't necessarily find that these smart technologies exist in a lot of businesses. Yes, I mean, I mentioned examples of chatbots and the risk scoring and so forth in financial services, and obviously in the manufacturing space, there's a lot of other stuff happening. But on the whole, as I say, people want to go straight to AI because it's the latest lingo, and we're almost having to pull them back to also just say, you need to crawl before you can walk, and you need to walk before you can run. And if it is something that is suitable for the business, absolutely, we can look to get you there, but it's a journey. It's a journey around the data, the quality of the data, etc. And in other instances, it's around having conversations to say, actually, you really don't need it. It's not fit for purpose. You've been sold this potentially by another consulting firm or wherever you've heard it, and you know, the latest and greatest. And an Excel spreadsheet and a couple of BI dashboards will suffice for what you need. So it's a little bit of that too.
I love that answer. I also experience it in the work I do, Siobhain, that people will start meetings with, "Can help us use AI?" And then I will say, "To do what?" And that's when I realize they haven't followed through. And also, I've solved more business problems with Excel than with any other smart technologies. But listen, yeah, so maybe just the last quick question before we end off. Marco Polo advisory. So Marco Polo, obviously the great explorer. I remember swimming or playing in the swimming pool, Marco Polo. But yeah, and we're going to put the link in the description, all that, so that people can reach out to you and your colleagues. Where did you get the name? Such a unique name for a technology-related firm. Yeah,
so you know, I think when I reflect back on it, it really sums up the personalities of the founders in the business, that we are a little bit sort of off the wall. You might have gotten that from this brief conversation already, just chatting to me. But we are a little bit unique and off the wall. So, you know, I think we wanted something that was also sort of quite different and didn't just have maybe a tech focus and a tech angle, number one. I think, you know, number two, you touched on it. It's around exploration. And I think that's what analytics, data science, and so forth is for us. It's around exploration of the data, of the information available about the insights, but it's also exploration in terms of the way we engage with the business. You know, so just exploring the knowledge of the people in the business. So again, my philosophy is analytics and data science, if it's going to be successful, cannot just be put in a corner and given to a team as a custodian and, you know, must sit there and run and work. It has to fundamentally be integrated into the business and work side by side in a partnership with the business. And that's the same way we like to work as Marco Polo. So it's very much around the conversations with the business, getting their knowledge. It's not always just about, well, you know, the analytics and the data says this, so that must be the way we proceed. And it's a little bit about that game you mentioned playing as a kid too, you know, Marco Polo, and the idea that you're constantly sort of chasing Marco, same thing, you know, analytics, data science, insight, it's not a destination, it's an ongoing journey, and you continue to uncover insights and so forth. So I think it's the idea of always asking questions, of the business and starting our engagements with questions, but recognizing that, you know, we're never going to reach a destination. It's always an ongoing exploration. So yeah, that's a little bit about where we got to. It's not all just technology, but a lot of it is also business side, human interaction, that sort of thing.
What a great answer. Love that. Billy, you want to end it off? It was fantastic.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Siobhain.
Thank you both.
Yeah, keep on the good work there, helping all these organizations to uncover insights and continue with the exploration work in the data science space. We really appreciate. Yeah, all the best with Marco Polo as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Johan. Thanks, Zenzele. It was a pleasure to be here.